Yesterday, South Africa launched its inaugural State of the Nation brand report in Constitution Hill. This saw a panel of thought leaders come together and engaging in a discussion about the comprehensive results of the study, which sought to assess how South African citizens identify themselves and relate with each other and the country. The report illustrates the influences and change agents of the nation's view of itself and what it means to be South African. Data used in this report derives from over 30,000 interviews conducted over 5 years. Wegelin is a researcher from Markdata and conducted the research. Jan, great to have you on the program. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity, and to your viewers.
It's a pleasure. 5 years, so much has happened in the last 5 years. If we look back at South Africa and the events that we've seen unfold before our eyes, I mean, talk to us about the study. How exactly was it conducted?
Thank you. Yeah, the study is a national representative survey done over 5 year of 2,500 interviews per year. And then in between, on a monthly basis, is to monitor between the annual events, is a sample of 350. So collectively, that's the 30,000 interviews. So we use the annual survey as the benchmark and then keep tracking from that benchmark within the specific year. And then we complemented those with qualitative research and focus groups and in-depth discussions that then just flesh out the detail of the quantitative findings.
And who? Let's talk about the kind of people that you got to participate in the survey.
From the National Representative Survey, that covers the entire country, from very deep rural areas in the Midlands of KwaZulu-Natal, for instance, and up in Limpopo, to the major centres in metro regions. It's representative. It uses Stats SA demarcation data that they use for the census as a platform from where the sample selection is done, and then it's weighted back to the national proportions. And our weight efficiency has always been in the region of between 75 and 85% in terms of what our sample is versus what the population looks like, and those are very good indicators of the strength of the representation of the sample.
All right, so let's get into some of the nitty-gritty now and some of the findings. So perhaps you can give us some of the most significant ones that are worth mentioning.
Yeah, it's a complex study. So I mean, there's a lot to talk about, but let me summarize it this way. We started out of a previous dispensation that was a terrible reflection of what governance means, and we needed the ANC government or the current government to lead us into a new direction. So we find that in the earlier forms of the study in 2017, when we did the first assessment, that there were still quite strong pockets in society that relied on that role of government to guide the nation into a new direction. And we have a few pointers of that. We had Rainbow Nation and FIFA World Cup and all of those events that kind of supported that new direction. However, two major events, the uncovering of crime and corruption in 2018 with several commissions of inquiry, left the nation a little bit confused as to what the direction is that the nation should be taking, and that the government, being that custodian of that new role, that new direction of what the country should be taking, didn't seem to align anymore with the vision that the nation had. And then in short succession to that is, of course, COVID-19, which has impacted not just South Africa, but all countries around the world. And the expectation was that we could come together as a nation, or these things could disrupt the fabric of the nation even further. And the former is true, and very much in a kind of reflection of what the country is capable of and how we look after one another despite these challenges that we face every day. And so the findings reflect a nation beginning to find its own identity separate from a government setting that position or setting the tone of what the nation is or could be. And those are very good indicators, fragile at this stage because just beginning to recover from COVID-19, but it shows that there are pockets of society that's beginning to find their own identity and what they represent as South Africans and who they want to be as South Africans. And these we see at community level, and where that interaction between individuals has been quite strong and supportive amidst the pandemic.
So just to ask you one or two questions about what you've already said. So, I mean, all in all, would you say that these are positive outcomes? I mean, from the 30,000 interviews that you've conducted over this 5-year period, are you positive about how South Africans feel about the state of the nation and how they feel being South Africans? Was it a positive outcome and feeling among South Africans?
That I wouldn't say as a general summary across the entire nation. We have various reflections of what is going on with aspects of xenophobia and Project Dudula and all of those kind of aspects that put tension into the current situation. We have high unemployment. We have the nation beginning to figure out what that means in terms of economic prospects going forward, with the digital economy taking quite a strong position, and how that would help the nation in general. So the findings show that there are more positive indicators of a nation beginning to identify itself with what it means to be South African, but that's amidst a great deal of other challenges. So the fragility that I referred to earlier is certainly very much there. And if something should happen, similar to the previous examples I mentioned, then that could challenge that fragility, and it may lead the nation into a slightly different direction.
You know, these last 2 years have been very hard times for South Africans, particularly with looking back to the COVID-19 scenario that we've had, the lockdown, the loss of jobs, loss of income, the way that South Africans have been struggling through these years. And then, of course, what we saw happening in July last year, the unrest, the worry, the desperation to a certain extent of South Africans of not knowing what to do. And then, previous to that, there's so much, the state capture report, the Jacob Zuma years that are spoken to so much. But I mean, how has it changed? I can't imagine that the feeling is a constant feeling and that you find that answers are constantly changing as you do the survey. Is that something that you did notice?
Absolutely. And it very much reflects that. I mean, we get up in the morning and we move around and we go to the shops or to work or to whatever we do, and we have a certain expectation of what we'll find when we leave our houses or the communities or wherever we need to travel to. And we don't generally notice those broader patterns, but the research certainly picks that up. And one of the examples, for instance, is that one of the behavioral groups really value the democratic principles of what South Africa is about. And there are 10 behavioral groups, and this is just one of them. And in the uncovering of corruption and the several commissions and so on in 2018, that group lost its importance of what it means to be a South African. In other words, the principles of democracy as a free country where everyone has the right to express themselves against great reflections of corruption and mismanagement made that group feel quite isolated. However, in the 2021 results that we've just released now, is that group is coming back and beginning to find its feet again and beginning to show that there are aspects at which they do have a voice. So the nation reacts to certain things, but it also begins to understand what those mean and redefine their perspective or just reaffirm their perspective on what the things are that they value about the country and beginning to reinstill those in perhaps a slightly different way, but it is becoming more important in terms of the overall reflection of what it means to be a South African.
All right, so this is just to wrap it up. I know this is just the one of 3 more reports that are set to be coming out as well. So what are the focus of those? So how will this sort of finally be concluded and wrapped up?
Yeah, I think the important part, and this is also what we discussed yesterday and came from the audience, is that the indicators that there are pockets of society that's beginning to come together, that's beginning to define themselves within the needs and expectations and capabilities of the community to be a South African, to contribute to the well-being of the community. Those things you can address from a broad national level, but they need to find their unique position in communities. And the call is therefore to explore what those avenues are in which Brandishøg could help together with its stakeholders in order to facilitate and support those development structures and perhaps networks between communities so that the successes within one community is perhaps shared with another, and that you start building the expectations and the goals of what it means to be South African from the bottom up. Because that is what true democracy is, after all, is that it's the rule by the people within the context and the circumstances that they are. And I just want to add one point to what you just said in terms of the riots and looting, is that we did see in the data more communities in specifically KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng where they have come together and they've started to challenge the structures in terms of accountability and being able to work together with public as well as private sector institutions within that community to strengthen the capability. So those are examples of what we see in the data, and the important point now is to tag onto those and to help them and to further strengthen.
All right, Jan, thanks very much for talking to us. Jan Wegelin is a researcher from Markdata and conducted this research that is basically looking at what it means to be South African and how South Africans identify themselves and relate to each other in the country. So this is just part 1 of 4 parts that are coming out. So we should be seeing those as well this year.